Welcome to Founder Tactics, a podcast about entrepreneurs and the communities that shape them. I am your host, Julia Lucidi, and thank you so much for tuning in today. So my guest today is Bernardo Carvalho Wertheim, also known as Bernie. He's the founder of The Bridge, a global recruiting network focused on digital professionals. As a solo founder, Bernie scaled to a team of 300 people and $10 million of annual recurring revenue in just 6 years. He also sold his company in 2023 to GI Group, which is an Italian HR conglomerate. In our conversation, Bernie shared about his international upbringing and career. And to start, his parents were refugees escaping Brazil during the military dictatorship, which led to him being born in the UK. Though years later his family returned to Brazil, Bernie continued to live a very international career, and he was able to leverage his experience to help build a company that would help other professionals all around the world have access to a global career as well. I don't want to give it all away, so I'll stop here. He's just simply an inspiration of doing what it takes to reach your goals, and his results clearly speak of that. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did, and let's dive in. Ladies and gentlemen, Bernardo Carvalho Wertheim. How did I do, Bernie?
You did really well, actually. Congratulations. Most people can't really spell and they just stutter the last German name. So congrats.
I just got back from Europe, so I'm feeling a little bit more global. So
I'm loving the Rio de Janeiro pictures behind you. So my hometown. So I'm happy to see those.
Yeah, I have like Rio de Janeiro stamped all over my house. I have like paintings of it. I have pictures. Just absolutely love the city. It's one of the most beautiful cities I have ever seen in my life.
It's great. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's dangerous and beautiful.
You know, it is dangerous, but in the 6 years that I lived there, I never like had any robbery or anything like super crazy happen. But I know that that's not the story for everyone. I know that there's a lot of situations, but I think once you live there for a while, you learn how to navigate the danger of Rio, you know?
That's correct. It's a bit like the startup world, the more experienced you are, the more chances you have to survive despite the bullets that come at you from all directions.
I love the connection. That was so good. So how about we start by you sharing a little bit about yourself, like in your own words. Who are you? What do you do?
Sure. I was actually born in the UK. I was born in the not so glamorous city of Essex. My parents were political exiles in the 70s. They escaped. My mom and my brother really escaped from Brazil. They went across borders, ended up in Chile. They lived in Chile for a while. And then finally they got asylum in Sweden. That's where my mom met my dad. He was an exile from the US, but he's also Brazilian. So when my brother was 14 years old, I was about to be born. They moved into the UK. So they moved into Essex. My mom went to university. So I was born in the UK. So I've got a British passport. But actually a year later, after I was born in 1980, we moved back to Brazil. So I grew up in Rio, which is where my family is from. So I feel Brazilian and Carioca. And when I turned 19, I decided to go to the UK to see what it's like. And I ended up going to university in the UK. I studied multimedia and digital systems. So the digital was there from the beginning. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So multimedia sounded like a good idea because it had a bit of everything. It had video, audio, it had programming, it had graphic design. At the end of the university, I realized I had no talent for design or programming. So I became a project manager. So I worked as a project manager and an account manager in many digital agencies, advertising companies. I lived for 11 years in London. It was difficult for a Carioca to live in such a cold place, but it was also amazing because obviously living in Europe, it was a great learning curve for me. Then I went back to Brazil. I lived in Australia. And ever since I got out of university, I was already doing a bit of entrepreneurship, doing some projects, web design projects and things like that for musicals in London. And in the same time working at agencies. So really, I grew up in Rio. I lived in London for 11 years. I educated myself in London. And then after that, I've been traveling quite a lot. But now I live in Chile for 8 years. I have 2 dogs and 2 cats. No children. My child is my company, I guess, which is what I dedicated fully in the last 7 years. And my wife is very patient. She's Chilean, but she lived in Spain for 13 years, so she knows what it's like to live in Europe for a long time. So currently living in Chile, and I don't know what's the next step yet, but that's the current situation.
That's great. Maybe the US.
Who knows?
It's like the last base for you. So you've lived across a lot of different cultures, which I have as well. And that presents some interesting challenges, but also like it shapes you a lot to live in different cultures and to everything from adapting to the weather to if it's safe or not, the language, how people do business. And you've experienced that from like a young age all the way through adulthood and continue to experience it, right? So I'm curious to know how living across so many different cultures and experiencing those different cultures have shaped you.
Definitely, it made a huge difference. First of all, in Rio, in Brazil, if you are middle class, you are used to, it's very common to have, for example, someone that works at your house that helps with the laundry, with the cooking, and etc. Your parents work full time, but it's very common to have help at home. So the first big change was to leave Rio and not only not have my parents and my friends, but also have to learn how to cook, how to wash your clothes, how to do all of that. I was 19 years old, so I was very spoiled. Even though we were not rich, we were actually, my mom was she did children's books and she used to sell children's books. So we were not rich at all. We were middle class. We had a normal, and she was a single mom because she separated from my dad when I was 3 years old. But we had help. So I never really learned how to do things at home. And I think that was the first big challenge. And then obviously having to support yourself emotionally, financially. I think when you move to another country, you are thrown in the deep end. So you have to quickly adapt to the culture, but you have to adapt also to how you run your day, how you behave, and how you deal with the different challenges. You have to quickly learn and quickly start doing things yourself. Mm-hmm. But I remember that it was actually quite rewarding to be able to work and get my first paycheck. I was working at Pizza Hut. That was my first job, even though I could speak English and I had a passport, so I could get an office job. No one would give me a job because I had no degree when I arrived. I was late. I was behind, in my studies. So I could speak English. I had a passport, but I had no work experience. So I had to work at Pizza Hut. I had to do a long day's work for very little money. I was making about £3, about $3.5 an hour. And I had to get home and I had to wash my clothes for the next day. I had to cook myself some food. And there was a rent coming at the end of every week. So I think that really changed my character completely. And I realized I had to go to university, COC, right? There's no
so
way
Chilean.
around it.
COC.
COC, yes or yes. And that motivated me to go into a course for adults and then go into university, because otherwise maybe I would have never gone to university if I didn't get that Pizza Hut job, if I didn't see, how my future would be, I wouldn't be reaching my full potential. I realized that I really needed, and there was no one to help me there. So I had to do it myself. So I guess those are the biggest things. And then obviously London, it's amazing because you don't just get to know people from London, right? You learn about Bangladeshi, Russian, and Greek culture in one day, right? And not just the food and the culture when you're traveling. You learn that, Russians are more closed. You can't just turn around and hug them, whereas the
You
Latinos, they're
can't even
different.
smile.
So
Don't
all
even
of these
smile.
things are, you have to be. So yeah, that was a great learning curve for me.
That's awesome. Yeah. Kind of a fun fact that I've learned about Russians is that in Russian culture, smiling is rude. It's seen as like you being like ignorant. And so I learned that here in South Florida. It was funny because my neighbors wouldn't smile back at me. And I was like,
Right.
and I literally Googled, in what country is it rude to smile? And the first one that popped up was Russia. I was like,
Wow.
wow, okay, learn something new every day. But that's really incredible, just the different experiences that you've been able to have. And even the point that you made on college, I feel like there's a pretty, significant movement, at least here in the US, of like not going to college and pursuing different routes, which is fine. But I really believe that going to college opens so many more opportunities for you. Like, I don't think you need to break the bank and spend, go into student loan debt for it, but even going to, a basic community college and just getting that degree opens so many doors. And I've just heard of different stories of people who have gone to college and then pursued more of a creative route, maybe dance or singing, but that going to college really positively impacted them. So it's definitely, I found it personally to be a really important step in my career as well. So
Of course, and more than just the career. I mean, it was so much fun to go to
yeah.
university, to be in the campus, the friends you make, the experiences. It's great. And in my house, there was a guy studying astrophysics, another were studying biology, the other two were doing AI, and I was doing computing. So I shared some courses with the AI guys. But when I come home, I could listen to what my friends were learning in the other spectrums. So that was huge. And obviously, we shared everything. We shared the food. We did shopping together. So it was a great experience. I really recommend, not just for your career, but for your life.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like in college you experience that like communal living, like living in close quarters with other people, sharing experiences. And as we get more into adulthood and, have our own jobs and live in our own houses, I feel like that sense of building community has to be a lot more intentional. It's not just going to happen. You have to build it for yourself. Do you see that being true for yourself as well?
Definitely. I mean, as soon as I arrived in London, I had to share flat anyway because no one can afford an apartment in London. And I had some interesting experiences with Chinese, Indian housemates, Italians, everything, Lithuanians, good and bad, of course. But I mean, just get out of your mom's house when you're 17, 18 is the best thing you can do as soon as you finish high school. If you can leave your mom's house, if you can go into the world and go to university somewhere else or do whatever you got to do, it's amazing, and it's good for your relationship with your parents as well because it's time, right? In the old days, and when you see nature, when you become an adolescent, is a time where you have to cut the umbilical cord, right? You have to learn how to do your things because otherwise it becomes detriment to you and to your parents as well. They deserve some time for themselves, even though they say they don't want you to go and they don't want to be lonely. In the end, I think is good for both in most cases.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to ask you a little bit now about entrepreneurship and what initially got you to dive into the world of entrepreneurship, because you obviously had an entrepreneurial mindset, in your upbringing and the projects that you were doing, but what kind of pushed you over the edge to take that first step at the time you started your digital agency, right? That was your first business. What
Yes.
prompted you to really take that step?
So I I arrived in London. I did a 1-year course and I had to pay for my own studies. So I had like 2 jobs. I would work in the shops or in the Pizza Hut or in the betting shops. Then I finally went to university on the second year or third year when I was in London, and there's a 3-year course. So I was doing different jobs at bars, restaurants, whatever you have to do to maintain yourself. So when I finished university, as I say, I was late at school. I missed a couple of years at school when I was in Brazil because I was having too much fun and I was being lazy. So when I finished university, I was a bit older. I started with 21 years old, so I was already 24 when I finished university, right? I got a really good job at Bloomberg TV because of my languages, because of the experience I had in the course. So I managed to land a really good job. But even though it was an entry-level job, I was making about £25,000 a year, right? So I could have I could share a flat and I could have a decent life in London, but it wasn't an amazing salary. Cost of living is high in London, and the reality is I was working in TV, but what I studied at university and my passion was web, right? I loved the internet, I loved websites. And even during university, I was already starting to make some websites. I was starting to making and sell websites to people who needed them, right? So I saw that there was a huge demand for websites and for web design, and there was not a lot of people doing it. And I also realized that the Brazilian creative talent was highly valued. A lot of people in London would say, "Oh, Brazilians are so creative, that's really cool." And on the other hand, in India, there was a lot of technical talent, right? So I always hear about the Indians, the university, etc., the great programmers. So while I was working at Bloomberg, actually, I was doing the shifts. So I was doing 12-hour shifts. You go in at 4 a.m. and you leave at 4 in the afternoon for 2 days. Then you have 2 days off. Wow. And then you do 3 days and then you have 3 days off. So it's a very long shift, but a lot of the times, and that was during the day, but then I was doing the night shifts. So when you do the night shift, there was a lot of extra time that you're just sitting around, right? So I started to realize that maybe I could do some extra work on the side to make some extra money and do what I like, which is websites, because I did like live TV environment. It was an amazing studios. Everything was high end, Bloomberg's a multi-billion-dollar company. So we were doing international live shows. So it was really fun, but I still wanted to do something with web. So I guess it was an opportunity to make money, an opportunity to address the market, use my skills and my contacts in Brazil, and also do what I like, which was web. So I said, I'm going to start doing some websites. I'm going to start doing some online stuff. I still have contacts from university, and a friend of mine was working for the London musicals. So the London musicals at the time, Billy Elliot, Hairspray, Zorro, all these cool,
all the classics.
Musicals, all the classics. The only way that you could buy them, most of the time, you had to go to a ticket office to buy at the time. Right? You're talking 2000, 2004, most of them were still offline. And the way you advertise them, it's also offline. You would be in the subways, right? You have the basically offline banners everywhere, right? You would have, and outdoors and things like that, or TV. So this agency, my friend used to work, Alex Woodford, a great friend of mine, they were starting to do the website for the musicals. So each musical needed its own website. It needed its own design, its own style. So Zorro, for example, it would be all with the sword and with the fires and all of that. So he started asking me, and he started outsourcing to me the design of the websites and also the design of the online banners, right? Because all of this was very new, and the agency that he worked in couldn't do them. So I started doing those websites, and I would hire Brazilians to do the design and Indians to do the development.
Oh my gosh.
And I would buy templates online on Template Monster, and then I would redesign the templates, right? We'd do everything on WordPress or something like that. So that's how Bravo Media started. That was my company, Bravo Media. Then I started to get in some clients in Brazil, also companies that wanted to do websites like hospitals. We had Rededor. We had lots of hospitals and lots of companies and small businesses that wanted to do their websites. So that's how Bravo Media started. And it was my first experience of having an international business because I had to open a company in Brazil for my Brazil clients and open a company in London for my London clients, so in the UK. So it was super interesting. And I partnered with other agencies. Sometimes other agencies would outsource to us, digital agencies, the production part of things, the part that they didn't want to do, right? So I was hustling. I was having my day job. I was at Bloomberg for 3 years. It was my longest ever job. I never worked for that long. And then I started working at bigger agencies and like Digitize, Agency Republic. And at the same time, I was doing Bravo Media. So, I would gain people's confidence. I would learn from them because these are big digital agencies. They were ahead. They were doing amazing things. And then sometimes, I was working as a project manager freelance. So I was a contractor. So I could run my business on the side. And that's what I did for 8 years or something, or 7 years. I worked at many agencies, so many agencies, I lost count. And I would build rapport with them. I would do projects with them. And then I would also do my own projects. Well, after a few years, we lost some clients in Brazil. We lost this main client in the UK. And then the company collapsed because I didn't have time to work, sell, and also do the projects. So because I wasn't selling, I was just getting clients in. They were coming in naturally via these partnerships.
Yeah.
So once the partnership was gone, then I didn't have any more clients. So I realized you cannot put all your eggs in one basket. That was my big learning. And and I learned a lot. I've learned about accounting. I learned finance.
Yeah,
I learned how to.
That's what I was going to say.
How to pay less tax and things like that.
We'll have a master class on that later. So do you feel like this first experience of having your first company built up your confidence to be able to, build your next company that was more scalable and kind of prepare you for the next step? Because when you step into entrepreneurship, it's intimidating. There's a lot of information that you need to understand. And at the end of the day, it's all on you. Just like you said, like selling's on you, tax and accounting, hiring, managing your partners, managing your client, managing the projects, like everything that encompasses the world of having a business is laid on your shoulders. And that first time you go through that as an entrepreneur, it stretches you in ways that you haven't been stretched before, right? So how do you feel like having that first company, what did it work out inside of yourself, like from a confidence perspective and entrepreneur that prepared you for the next phase?
Yes, so I think the first company played a big role. I've learned basic things like tax and finance, very, very basic because I'm still basic at it. But I do know that if you don't turn a profit, you don't have to pay tax. So sometimes I always remember my dear accountant who said to me on the first year of the company, I think we made about $100,000 or something like that, 150,000. And but I spend most of it on my cost of living, helping my mom, sending money, paying people, hiring, whatever. So when it came to the end of the year, I didn't make any profit. And I turned to my accountant and I was like, oh no, I didn't make any profit. That's really bad, isn't it? And he said, that's not so bad. Actually, it can be good because if you don't make profit, you don't pay tax. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Of course, you can't do that forever. You have to be profitable eventually. But on the first year, you don't. If you reinvesting all your money, right, then you're using up the money and you paying yourself, you don't make profit, but you had a good year. You sustained yourself, you helped your family, you grew the company, you reinvested it. So that's fine. So that was a big learning for me. Obviously, I've learned dealing with pressure. I've learned how to hire, how to fire, which is harder than hiring, I think, in most cases. But also, I took a lot of learnings from my mom because she had her own business as well. And I think that was really important for me because you have to have fear. If you don't have fear, if you are comfortable, then you're not ready to run a business. If you're not scared that you're gonna go broke every day, then you're gonna get comfortable and then you're gonna go broke. So it's good to be scared. I've always been terrified of going broke. So I only do bootstrap businesses. I don't raise money.
Right.
And I think that was a value that I've learned from my mom, because even though I didn't have kids, I had to help her when I was doing my business. Every time ever since I got my first paycheck, I started sending money home to Brazil. So I think it's a great learning. And the technical side of things, obviously design, development, etc., I've learned at university, but the client management side of things, dealing with angry clients, dealing with being late on your deliverables, dealing with the responsibilities, I've learned that working in marketing agencies. I think one of the best experiences you can have for running a business is working at a marketing agency, because it's absolutely crazy. It's almost the same as running a business.
Wow.
Because if you're a project manager like I was, what did I have to do? I had to make the team do the work. I had to help the team getting the work done. And then I had to go and deliver that to the client. And then I had to budget that for the client to present a proposal. And then I have to go and check with finance if the client paid us. So it was almost like running a business.
Right.
Being a project manager or being an account manager in a marketing agency, it's like running a mini business. You're running a business unit. So I think it's super important to also get that work experience. If you can do it at the same time, even better, because you get in your cash flow, you get in your salary, and you run in your business as well. Of course, you have to be careful so there's no conflict of interest, right?
Of course.
Always when you're working in a company and you have a job, always try to talk to the other business units and learn from them. Ask them the other areas, the other sectors, everything. If you talk to marketing, you talk to finance, you talk to HR, people say, oh, I'm only going to talk to HR if I have a complaint or if I'm going to quit or something. No, you should go and talk to them and ask, what do they do? What is the day like? Same with finance, same with accounting, same with marketing, same with sales. If you at least understand what they do, not only that's going to help you do a better job at your current job, but that also is going to prepare you for entrepreneurship. And if you can run a side business and there's nothing to do with what you do currently, and you have permission to do that, then do it. There's always the lemonade stand sort of thing that people talk about. And it's amazing how much you learn from it. But the reality is, I think a lot of times people feel like they don't have enough time, or they're not going to be able to do it, or, maybe they're feeling lazy and they just want to enjoy their personal time. That's fine, but you can still create some sort of business revenue or venture or idea and have your spare time and do your job. It's going to be a great learning from you. And even if it goes bust, you're going to learn a lot from it. So I always recommend that.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I love that. And so Bravo Media was your first child, and the second child was The Bridge Social. And did you jump in from one pool to the next, or what was that transition into creating your second company like?
Actually, it took a few years, Julia. When I finished Bravo Media, then I had to focus on making money, and I was doing well. I was working at a lot of agency. I was in high demand. Digital talents were in high demand in the 2000s, and finally by 2011, Bravo Media lasted from, I opened it in 2004 when I graduated, and then it ran for about 3 or 4 years, I guess. I also went to live in Brazil for a little while, and I was running the business there from my brother's living room. And then when Bravo Media closed, I guess it was around 2008, 2009. But then I was still trying to find my feet, and I was working at many companies and many agencies. And it was only around 2014, 15, when I felt like Brazil didn't work out so much for me. I didn't fit in with the culture. I was very used to the British work culture, and it wasn't easy to fit in with the Brazilian culture. I guess I was tired as well of working for 10 years in agencies, from 2004 to 2014. I really needed a change, and I needed a new purpose. I felt like I wanted to open something new, but I didn't want to open an agency again. I didn't want to work in an agency,
Right.
and I didn't want to open an agency, so or a consultancy. So my idea was, I was trying to figure out, what do I have to offer to the world? What is my differentiation point? Am I just an average guy that doesn't have anything extra to offer, or is there something there that I can differentiate myself, so that I can differentiate and create something different? I know that's a
No,
repetition
it
there,
it
so sorry
totally
about
makes
that.
sense. It totally makes sense.
And then I looked within and I said, okay, I've got the languages. I can speak English, Portuguese, and Spanish. That has given me an edge quite a few times when I was
Same.
job hunting. Also, I worked in many different countries, and I'm used to moving to different countries and surviving there. So I moved to England, I moved to Australia, I moved back to Brazil, and I was in Australia, and I was broke. I was really broke. I had like $300 in my account. And to live in Australia, you need a lot more than that.
Yeah.
I lost my job, and therefore I lost my visa, because I had a work visa, right? In Australia, you need a work visa, even if you're European. So for the first time, I was really lost. I was like, after a long time, I was making really good money, and I didn't want to go back to London to go back to the same thing, and I didn't want to go back to Brazil to go back to the same thing. So I said, okay, a lot of people come up to me and say, how do I go to live in Australia? What do I do if I want to go to live in Europe? How did you do it?
Yeah.
How did you get around to do that? Um, so I thought, oh, okay. And also I thought, well, maybe I can help people to go and live in a different country. Okay, but how's that a business? How's that a business model? I don't want to be a travel agency or a coach.
Yeah.
I need something more than that. And then I remember that there's a huge demand for Brazilian creative talent and Latin American creative talent. And there's a huge demand for Asian technical talent as well. And also Brazilian technical talent. I mean, there's a lot of developers in Brazil, amazing people. So I thought, maybe I can connect the dots, because I know a lot of agencies in Australia, I know a lot of agencies in London, and they are constantly hiring. And I know all of this talent in Latin America, and they're always looking to move abroad. They want
Oh,
to have the
yeah.
experience to move abroad, most of them. So maybe I can connect these companies with these talents. Maybe I can build the bridge. And that's how the name came. So I got the bridge here, see?
Yeah.
So I thought, that's it. I can help people. That can be my purpose, to help other people, because I still felt privileged, even though I was broke. All of my experience have shaped me, and I built a big following on LinkedIn and Facebook. So I felt like people looked up to me and people wanted to learn from my experiences. So I thought, maybe I can help people to also have the privilege to live abroad. And at the same time, I can create a business model around helping these companies hiring people. I wasn't just going to open a recruitment agency. So I thought, well, okay, maybe I can create a global network of technical talents and creative talents. So that was the idea of the bridge. It was a LinkedIn for creative and technical talents.
Yeah.
And that's how the idea was born in my head.
That is really awesome. And I've got to tell you, like, ever since we've first met, I really noticed how you just have like a unique personality. Like, you're very much so you. You know what I mean? You don't cover up any edges. You're really just looking to be authentic. And I think that that really stands out. And I love that you went through this process of self-reflection and didn't just lean back on what was comfortable, because you could have, right? but something deep down inside of you told you, that's not the way, and that there was a new front for you to uncover. And that's kind of like that adventurous spirit, which I really, really relate to. Like, I don't like doing the same old. I want to always be pursuing something different, something that's going to allow for me to explore something I haven't experienced before. And you really followed that, and it takes a lot of courage and grit to build something new. So that's very, very cool. And
Thank you.
yeah, no, absolutely. And so, how did you go about getting your first clients? You had this great idea, but idea on paper is one thing, and getting that idea off paper and making money is a whole nother game. So, how did that unfold?
So I was 36 years old. I wasn't that young anymore,
Hey now, hey now.
compared to a lot of entrepreneurs, right? They start at 20 somethings. So I was 36. I had responsibilities. I was still helping my family back home. And I was working. I had to go back and work at a restaurant. So I worked in a restaurant in Australia just to keep myself going in the meantime. I had no business model. I didn't know how I was going to make money. How does LinkedIn make money? I mean, you need to have massive amounts of data and visitors and companies advertising, and it still didn't make money for a long time. So at the time, there was no such thing as venture capital, or it wasn't a popular thing. It wasn't a thing. So I worked for another year. I left Australia and I had to go back to London just so I can support myself, because I was kicked out, basically. I was kicked out of Australia. My visa expired. So I went back to the only place that I could support myself in the meantime, whilst I could build the company, right? So went back to London, got a job in an agency called Oliver. And this agency, I worked there really hard for a few months. But I created the website for the bridge, right? I created the website and I started to take jobs that would come to me, because a lot of companies, I was in the mailing list. So companies from London and from Australia would send me jobs. So I would take those jobs and put on my website. And I started to advertise the bridge as the place to find international jobs in digital, to find digital jobs. Because LinkedIn obviously is everything, right? LinkedIn is too big and it's not niche. So I thought, I'm going to create this website and I'll make it a niche website for jobs, for digital jobs, right? For cool jobs as well. Not digital jobs that had bad salaries or unknown companies. I was putting just cool jobs that I would find. And also sometimes I would literally just go on LinkedIn and put a job on my website, because I thought, oh, that's a cool job. I'm going to put it there, because I wanted my audience to have that curated list of jobs. I thought, that's something of value. I wish I had that.
For sure.
Right? There was no digital jobs website at the time, at least not that I could know of. So, and then I started publicizing the bridge. I would share the jobs on the website. I would put up, it was literally just one page, right? It was one page and it was simple, but he had this look. I took an image from this amazing illustrator called Ruben Ireland. Definitely worth looking up. And he does this sort of dark, creative, very, let's say, how do you call it? Subjective drawings, right? He does illustrations of like these women dressed in black, and then there's bats and dark things melting and stuff like that. So it was very sort of like a members club, like something that you had to be invited on, something exclusive.
Underground.
So that was the idea. Underground, club for digital people that wanted to get cool jobs. That was the idea. So it wasn't so scalable, but I thought I need a niche. I need to get some people interested. I can scale it later. And I started telling my closest friends and ex-colleagues about the bridge and asking them to get involved and help me, refer to friends, share the links, share the jobs, check this out, etc. So every time someone asks me about living abroad, I would say, well, go to the bridge and sign up, register. And it was literally a Google form, right? It just goes into an Excel sheet. At the beginning, I played around with the paid membership. So I started, my first client was people from my network, from LinkedIn, my first 50 clients. So I did little events. I started doing like little events around London. And I was charging $50. I was charging $50 for a membership. Or was it $100? It was about 50 or $100 for a membership. And I got 50 people to sign up. So I made $500. And I was like, whoa, that's not bad. I did that in a week. So if I make $500 a week, that's $2,000 a month. That's not bad. That's like almost half of my salary. So people signed up, and the promise was that I was going to help them finding a job abroad by sending them jobs, but also by giving them some coaching, leadership, and interesting contents and coaching, right? So people believe me because they say, well, he lives abroad, he's working in this cool company, so he must know how to do it. So I got about 50 people to sign up in the end with the membership, with the paid membership, and it was paid by Stripe. And it was so exciting to see the
payment come in,
the payment coming in. But the problem is quite a lot of the people who were signing up, I couldn't help them because, for example, they didn't speak English. So how can I help someone that doesn't speak English to get a job in London? I can't.
No.
They didn't have a passport. They didn't have a visa to work in London. And they weren't so senior that someone would actually sponsor them.
Right.
So a company would sponsor them. So in the end, I realized that it was a lie. I wasn't able to deliver what I was promising. So I stopped the paid membership.
Yeah.
And I promised that I would never charge an employee, because then I would get people that would beg me and say, I'm unemployed. I really need a job. Can you help me? And I was like, I can't charge this person.
Yeah.
They're unemployed. So it touched my core and my values. And I said, this is not going to work. This business model doesn't work. So I stopped the premium membership and I actually give back the money, I think, to most people. And then after that, I said, okay, I need to find another business model. But I said, for now, I'm just going to build the database. I'm just going to bring as many people as I can. I'm just going to put as many cool jobs as I can here. And I'm going to build a following. I'm just going to build a following, and I'm not going to make any money for now, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Suddenly, this agency that I was working in, they said, do you know anyone that speaks Portuguese and Spanish and might want to go to Chile? And I was like, yeah, me. I want to go to Chile. I want to be near my family. My family in Brazil. My mom was getting old. So I said, I really want to go near, at least live in South America so I can be near my family.
Yeah.
So I took the job to come to Chile, and it was a 6 months contract to do a rebranding for an insurance company. So I arrived in Chile, and my website had about 2,000 people now. The bridge has about 2,000 people that signed up, and they were in an Excel sheet. There was no such thing as engagement, but they were there. And I would send them an email every now and then.
Sure.
And then I discovered Startup Chile. So Startup Chile was the turning point, because Startup Chile, the program at the time was 2016, and they offer you $30,000 to start your business in Chile.
Yeah. Just for those who don't
support.
For those that don't know, Startup Chile is an accelerator program sponsored in part by the government of Chile, or fully, I'm not sure. And just because some people aren't familiar with like the startup world that may be listening, and an accelerator, the role of an accelerator is to support a startup, so a business who it's in its very beginning phases, and help them with resources, help them think about their business structure, get clients, get funding, all the support from legal to going to market, adjusting your product or service to fit a market that's more scalable. And Startup Chile is one of the most, I would say, well-known accelerators. At least having worked in Latin America, Startup Chile was a really, really big example for us in Brazil as well. So it's very well known. So continue.
Yes, absolutely. So it's the Y Combinator of LATAM. So there were a lot of startups there, and the community was great, right? Because at least you're not so lonely when you're being an entrepreneur. It's so hard when you're alone.
Yeah.
So I got into Startup Chile, still had no real business model. Still didn't know how I was going to make money out of this thing. But I reached out to some friends, and Andre Matarazzo, I have to send a shout out to Andre for recording a video, plus Noel Ganem and Felipe Silva. They agreed to make a video and say that they were working with me on the startup. They weren't really. They were just giving me a hand. It was really just me. But, you had to have a team to go in.
Yeah.
So they made videos from home. One was in Brazil. They were everywhere, and they were great. Noel helped me a bit with the company at the beginning. There was an event. She helped me with content a little bit at the start, but everyone had their job, so they couldn't dedicate. And basically, it was me in Startup Chile running it, and we got in. So we got the 30 grand. However,
we got
that
in
$30,000,
you yourself,
yeah,
and that's it. We got
yeah,
in
it was
as in
just
you.
me. Yeah. So the thing with Startup Chile, there's all this support that you mentioned, but the issue is you have to show that you're actually spending the money in the company, right? You can't just go to a bar and just
Right.
buy rounds. And it was very, very tight. I only had about $500 a month for myself as a salary. Just the rest had to be marketing, design, etc. So, but the good thing is I got to dedicate 100% to the company. I didn't have to have a job. So I finished my contract and I dedicated for 6 months to the bridge. And those 6 months, I did a couple of recruitment projects for the other people in Startup Chile. So there was a yoga teacher. She was launching a yoga platform. She needed a designer. Okay, I did some recruiting. And I said, well, I have to charge for this. So, okay, give me $300. I found you someone. And I found someone for her. And someone else needed a developer. So I went off and I looked in my network. I found someone, charged them and give them in person. So I was like, okay, this is not so bad. I can do this. I have a good network and I know how to select people because I've been working in this for 10 years. Yeah. So actually I could do this as a recruiter, right? But again, it was very little money. And by the end of the 6 months, the money ran out. So basically, I still had no product. I still had you can't build a platform with a global LinkedIn platform with 30 grand and live and survive when you're 36 years old. It's impossible. And that's why 98% of the companies died outside of Chile. I mean, we survived. And I think 2 more survived out of our batch, of our group. So the money ran out. So I got a job at Accenture, and I went to Argentina. So I was flying back and forth, Argentina and Chile. And when I started working at Accenture, I agreed with my boss that I was continued working with the bridge because there was no conflict. And in my first day of work at Accenture, someone called me. And someone said to me, Bernie, I heard that you have a company that hire UX designers in Latin America. And I need UX designers in Latin America desperately. And that company is a global consulting, management consulting firm. And and from them in his history, on the first year, we did $500,000.
Wow.
We started hiring UX designers all over Latin America and sending them by plane to different countries. When they were Brazilian, we sent them to Colombia. One of them works with me today, Roger Neri, if you hear this, great stuff. And Emiliano Quinquele, who was this guy who called me, also works with the bridge. He's one of our contractors.
Oh, nice.
So today we're honored to actually hire people from different companies, amazing companies. But that's how it started, basically, where they needed UX designers, not just recruiting, but these companies also needed for outsourcing. So they needed people to be allocated in projects, right? They need to send them and work in different projects in different countries. So suddenly we had to learn how to hire, outsource, bill people from different countries. Luckily, Chile, it's a very open economy. It's very easy to open a company here. and is easy to invoice to other countries. And I had a couple of people. I had just one finance person and one recruiter, and then me. And that was it. I had one finance, one recruiter, and me. I was selling and I was being CEO. So that's how the bridge started. And the bridge went from $500,000 on the first year to $10 million 6 years later,
Right.
until we exit. Yep.
Yeah. And you scaled to a staff of 300 people around the whole world. And
That's correct. So we started opening the different offices, and we were always very aggressive. I was always very aggressive. People would say to me, no, don't open in Colombia. It's very difficult. Don't open in Mexico. It's too bureaucratic. And I was like, I don't care. I mean, I need to grow. Chile is too small, Chile is a small country.
Yeah.
So we opened Brazil in the next year, of course, because I'm Brazilian. We started to get orders from Brazil. So Chile and Brazil is the big ones. But then we just aggressively, and we just did anything our clients asked for, we did. So do you need someone for 3 weeks? Yeah, we can do that. Do you need someone for a year? We can do that. Do you want just recruiting? Sure, we can do that. So we just did everything because we didn't want to go bust. So again, be scared. If you're scared, you do whatever it takes.
Yeah, no, that's great. And how was managing that growth, right? Like growing to a team of 300, finding the right talent. You guys were remote from the start, right? You guys never were like an in-person office. And so what were some of the ways that you were able to like establish culture and connection amongst the team members? I don't know, did you guys do team trips or, I'm sure you guys were connecting all the time online, but how did you establish kind of that strong culture within your team?
So yes, we were born remote. A lot of my team were based in Argentina, Brazil, or Chile, and we never had an office up until last year, I think. And still, it's a co-working. So now we have offices because obviously now we're part of a big group. But we never had offices, and building a culture, I would say, was one of my weakest skills in terms of, even though it's a people company, like, I don't like the HR word, but it's a people company. I was very much into building the mission, creating and driving it forward and cracking the whip and pushing us forward and looking for the best people and trying to inspire them. And I think people were inspired by our brand, our mission, and what we were doing and the growth, right? People were always impressed by how fast we were growing, how cool were our clients. We're always working with global companies, cool companies. And people were impressed by how we positioned ourselves in the market. It took time. It took us about a couple of years to actually build culture because being remote was so hard to do it. We didn't have team trips. We didn't have offsites. We didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
No way. We couldn't afford it. I mean, I've always been very frugal with our money. It was funny because when we sold the company, it was only then that I realized how much money we actually had in our, because I never touched it.
Right.
I always took the minimum salary. I never had an office. I never spent on advertising. None of that. The only thing we would spend on was events, because in-person events always worked well for us. And actually, one thing that is worth mentioning in terms of how to market and how to position and create a brand, one thing that I did right at the beginning, before Startup Chile, before anything, was I wrote a book about how to live and work abroad and how to go and live in London. So
What's
I
the
wrote
book called?
Book. It's called The London Creative Guide.
Nice.
I don't know if the website is still up. I don't know if you can still download. I have to, but if you go to London Creative guide.com, you should open a webpage. Yes, the webpage is still going.
Wow. How did that help you?
It still has the old logo of the bridge. Well, look, I had so much to tell after living 11 years in London. I've learned so much about living in London. So I did a book that was about living in London and also getting a job in London. There's a list of agencies there with the address. So you could actually go there. And that was, if you look at the page, there's a print there. You can see Digitas, an agency that I worked, and it has the email for you to apply for jobs there, right? And other agencies. So it's literally to help people. It was my mission. And that book, I didn't sell it. I just gave it away. I just put it, it's online. You can download. But it positioned our brand as a creative company, as a global talent creative company, right? So that was a really smart thing. And then I would do events. I would do a book launch. I did a book launch in Brazil. I did a book launch in London.
Wow.
I did a book, you know what I mean? I did in Rio. I did in Sao Paulo. I gave books away to people. It's a beautiful book. You can see it's beautiful illustrated.
I can't wait to see this.
Yeah, by Anna Schutz. Shout out to Anne who did it for free, and Danilo who did it for free, you know, and helped me out. And people just helped because they thought it was something cool and new. And I'm going to update the link so people can download the PDF. It has English mistakes in it, but it doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter. It's with my MVP. So
I'm super excited to check out the book. Yeah, I'm definitely going to download it. So being a solo entrepreneur in itself is already a challenge, you know, and there's all the weight of leadership and growing your company. Were there ways that you perhaps like hobbies or habits that you implemented kind of to like renew yourself and to refresh your mind, like stimulate more ideas? 'Cause sometimes when we're in the grind, it doesn't allow for us to think like creatively and differently, right? We have to take a step away, sometimes through hobby, sports, faith, different things that might help us kind of break into a different mindset. Were there any things that you did or currently do that help you?
Currently, yes. But in the last 7 years of entrepreneurship, you know, I'm lucky that I have a high metabolism because otherwise I would be extremely fat. I did no exercise, and I always try to eat well. I eat reasonably well. I don't pile on pizzas and burgers. I've suffered a lot from stomach aches, from gastritis,
Nervousness,
burns, whatever, heartburn, and all of that. So I had that for years. But I could say now that I do exercise. I go to the gym twice a week, and I do have a hobby now, a sports hobby, which is skiing. So I do snowboard on the weekends when there's snow.
That's so nice.
And that's great. It really helps clear my mind. And I run with my dog. I just walk my dog. I hug my dog. So just to hug your dog and to be with it, I think that really sort of helps you slow the revolutions down a bit. But unfortunately, no, I didn't have any hobbies. I didn't have any sort of and I didn't do any sports, and that could have gone really bad for me. I have had really bad mental health issues. I was depressed most of my teenage years. I was very skinny in Rio, and in Rio, everyone's like big, right? Everyone goes on the beach and they're strong.
Oh yeah,
and they play
everybody
football.
has big muscles.
Big muscles. They can surf. They can play football. I couldn't surf. I couldn't play football, and I was skinny. So I got into dancing, salsa dancing. Okay, that's a good thing. I can do that. I can do that very well. I was a very good dancer. So that got me through the final years in Brazil before I went to London. And in London, I danced a lot of salsa. So that's a really good thing. If you can go out and dance, that really clears the mind and is social and is fun. So I do recommend that. And eat well and try to get sleep. But for me, it was hustle. You know, the bridge was my day and night thing. Now, when I met my current wife, I was on my second year of the bridge. And her parents came from Venezuela and they moved into our house here in Chile. So I was fortunate because then after the second year, I met her in 2018. So after the second year, I had the privilege of having them cooking, cleaning, doing everything at the house, and also taking care of me. You know, if I was sick, they would come and make me soup. So I had that privilege, and I had her support. So shout out to Pamela, because she really supported me, and without her I wouldn't be able to do it, because solo founder, right? Solo founder, and people leave, and clients leave you, employees leave you, everything goes down the drain, but your wife is there and your dog is there, so they were my bedrock. I think my hobby was my wife and my dog, really.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything else. That was it.
Well, and that's such an important foundation. You know what I mean? Imagine there's people who are founders and going through that without having a strong foundation of a family. And I think that that's so much harder, because whenever you're an entrepreneur and, you're low on cash, or you're, going through struggles or working late, and having a family that supports you in whichever way they can, right? So, your in-laws cooking, that's the way they were able to serve and love you, and just how that is such a solid contribution to what you were able to build. And that's really where I see community being a really big part of entrepreneurship, right? So for you, your family and your wife's family, who's also your family, stepped in and played that role to give you that kind of support, which is beautiful.
Definitely.
It's much harder if your spouse doesn't believe in what you're doing and thinks you should get, a different type of job that's more steady. Then you're going head to head on your values, and that's a lot harder to be able to pursue and maybe even get success.
Yes, absolutely. I would say it's almost impossible. If you don't have support at home, then either you're going to have to leave or you're going to give up. But to just continue, if you don't have support at home, you see in the speeches, every successful person, from actors to entrepreneurs, they always think, their family and their spouse, because they know the spouse has to put up with so much.
That's so true.
Right? And they have to be thankful for that.
Yeah, that's so true. Was there any other element of community that helped you as an entrepreneur? We talked about Startup Chile, which I think was a really big part. Even like the community that you built prior to building the bridge was an important community that contributed to the bridge, right? And so sometimes when we think of community, it's not only business. There's business, yes. There's family. Is there any other area of community that you felt made a really big impact for you?
Definitely. I think the UX community has been crucial for the bridge from the beginning. So the leaders, the managers, the UX designers from Brazil and from Chile, who always welcomed us, because they were so tired of the IT consultancies and the IT recruitment companies that knew nothing about UX. So I guess when we appeared, these days we do a lot more than UX. We do everything: technical, data, UX, etc. But at the beginning, our niche was UX, because that was my background. I liked UX. I wasn't a designer. I was a terrible designer, but I understood the process, and I liked the process of UX research, UX design, UX. So the community always welcomed us with open arms. At the events, people were really chuffed, and they really liked our content. And the managers, they liked there was someone that was that understood them. They understood what they need. So we were well received. And I remember that there were times when, if a UX job opened in Chile or Brazil, most of the time it was with the bridge. And if someone was looking for a job in UX, they would come to the bridge first, and they still do. We still have the WhatsApp groups here with the UX managers in Brazil. And I still big friends with many of the UX managers around Latin America. So the bridge is well recognized in that area. And now it's digital talents in general. So that was key. And also the community of expats. I think Internations, even though it's not the best website, it's not so cool and trendy. Sometimes I even call it desperations, because, you move to a new country, you're desperate to meet someone, and suddenly you go into a room and everyone's desperate. So
that's
it's
hilarious.
not the best. But Internations is really fun, because out of internations, I met some of my really good friends here as well in
Ah.
Chile. Germans, Italians, French people that are here and that I can connect with, because after all, they're European. I'm European. I lived in Europe for so long. So it's hard to break into the local culture. It's easier when you find other people from the same region that you are. And internation does work for that. Small world is a bit more expensive and is supposed to be for people with high net worth. But again, check it out, because a small world and internations are really good places for you to, when you arrive in a country and you know no one, go there. That's what helped me, and it helped me a lot.
Yeah, that's something that I wish I would have done when I moved to Brazil. Because when I moved there, I was 23, and I'm sure you can relate to this, but I felt just very not Brazilian, even though I am, because I was raised outside of Brazil. And so just everything from the way I dressed, the way I talked, the way I thought, the way I approached work, like everything just felt to be different. And I actually, when I met my husband, he lived in the US for 12 years too. He lived in Boston and he lived in Boca Raton. And we met at church in Rio. And his nickname was Gringo because he's like, came from the States, also Brazilian, but came from the States. And whenever I met him, we connected right away on humor. Like we had the same humor. And I remember we would watch like late night shows together. And it was just such a breath of fresh air to be able to connect with someone who understood American culture for me, so much so that
Yeah.
we got married. and
Mm-hmm.
and what's cool is now that we live in the U.S., it's so awesome to have somebody who connects with me on Brazilian culture, right? And that
Right.
understands, my passion for capoeira, y bossa nova, y música popular brasileira, and just there's so many things about, like, I study a lot of Brazilian history. I like reading books on Brazilian history, and he's like right there with me, like enthralled by the topic. And so it's really nice just to be able to connect with people who understand that multinational identity, which I guess is similar with you and your wife.
Yes, absolutely. It's super important, and it's great to when it goes both ways, right? You connect with the US, but you also connect with Brazil. Same
Yeah.
way here with my European friends, some of them have been here so long that they talk absolutely Chilean in the way that they talk, and they're German. And it's funny, but they still have some habits from back home. So yeah, it's really enriching.
Awesome. So I wanted to take maybe the last few minutes of our conversation just to talk a little bit more about like the talent world, and just we've seen a lot of shifts in the past couple of years with COVID, a massive talent demand, and kind of people looking for the jobs being dominating the conversations, and now that table switching, right? In the company, there being mass layoffs, the companies having more leverage. And I would just love if you could share like a little bit of insight of what you're seeing in the market, and just how people can prepare for what the market is looking like now, both from looking for a job or hiring talent. Can you share a little bit?
Definitely. I think the most important is for, I should say, for people who are looking for a job, right? They are the ones who are going through the most difficult time now. And lots of friends, lots of acquaintances have been out of a job for months. And it's hard to imagine, but last year or the year before during the pandemic, I kept hearing it's a bubble, it's a bubble. The salaries are too high. Junior people trying to get into senior jobs, and they don't have the experience. They're not ready, but they're asking for $5,000 salaries. So when is this gonna correct? Right? When is the market gonna correct? When is it gonna? When are when are we actually gonna have access to talents for the costs that corresponds to that experience. The costs were too inflated, right? The salaries were inflated, and the supply of talents were very short. So what people need to understand is that there were some big shifts in the investment world, right? Of course,
Mm-hmm.
there's no more VC money available widely as it was before. So we don't have that competition, startups competing with the big companies as much. So of course, there'll be much lower demand for talents and lower salaries as well. So what could people do? Well, they should do what I've been saying that they should do before they lost their jobs, which is invest in themselves, invest in developing their skills, invest in studying and growing, right? Invest in lateral learning. So what I always say, for example, for UX designers, learn about data, because that is the biggest request that we get from clients all the time. We need data-centric designers, right? Developers, invest in your people skills, in your communication skills, so that you can take on leadership roles or client-facing roles, or even if it's internal clients, but so that you can communicate better and you can be more strategic as well when you're presenting your solutions. So it's super important that people get out of their comfort zone. People always look to learn, and learning these days is free. I mean, if you just go on the Google courses, you have Google courses for data science, machine learning, UX design, and these are still high demand jobs. And you can go on Duolingo. Duolingo now has a certification, which is like an IELTS, and you can do the certification. That's a paid one, but you can do Duolingo anyway, and you can learn English. You can learn a third language. Don't stop at English.
Yeah.
My biggest advantage when I graduated, I got a job before all of my housemates, and they are British. They were born and bred, and I got a job before them.
Wow.
Why? Because I could speak Portuguese and Spanish.
Yep.
If I only speak Portuguese, I wouldn't get that job. But I've learned Spanish during my degree. Get any job. That's my first advice. When I was 36 years old, I was serving wings in a restaurant in Australia, right? So don't be proud.
Yep.
Just take any job.
Oh my gosh.
Because that's going to help you.
This is so true. This is such an important part, because we can let our egos can get in the way of us reaching our goals. And sometimes people will see that as taking a step back. But the truth is, having taken, a pizza place job allowed you to take one step closer to where you wanted to be. So I think, just not letting our ego get in the way. It's really important.
And take a step back. And people, they don't want to take a job with a lower pay, with a lower salary than what they had before, right? Well, but that could have helped you start break into a new area. So I guess, well, we are where we are, right? So let's say you've been out of a job for 3 months or 6 months, and you are getting desperate, of course, because you have bills to pay and you have children. You need to find a way out of this. So my practical solution is go in and do a machine learning course or a data analytics course or an AI course. Anything to do with data, machine learning, and AI, it's in high demand and it will grow. The demand looks to grow, right? Finance, if you can do finance, do something with finance. That's super useful as well. And the other option is go and open your own agency. Open your own thing. Start freelancing. Do contracting. Go into the temporary jobs websites. Do projects. Do hourly rate projects. So if don't look for the same thing that you were doing before. If you were a manager before at a big the food delivery company, and you are a UX manager, or you are a data analytics manager, then look at other things that you can do. There are completely different things that you can do. You can open an e-commerce and sell things. You can sell cupcakes, in the market. You can sell used clothes. You can do anything. Just do something.
Yeah.
But if you sit at home looking for a manager job, then it'll be difficult. Now the time is difficult.
That's great advice. Well, this wraps up our conversation. I would love for you to share with people, how can they find you and get in touch with you?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn. My profile is full, but you can follow me on LinkedIn. Otherwise, just drop me an email, Bernardo@thebridge.social, and happy to help if you need advice, if you need some direction and a list of places with jobs, or if you just want to share some ideas, just drop me an email.
Great. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Bernie. This has been really, really great. And we'll log off here. We'll talk to everyone soon. Bye-bye.
Pleasure. Thank you, Julia. Bye.
And that wraps up our show today. Thank you so much for listening to Founder Tactics. I hope that you've enjoyed it. And don't forget to support the channel by liking, subscribing, and rating, and definitely share it with somebody that you think would enjoy this podcast today. Shoot us an email at hello@foundertactics.com or leave us a voicemail at 305-482-1854. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.